You wonder why they don't respect you, but the truth is they've just followed your lead. Every time you downplayed your value, softened your tone, or waited for permission, you trained the world to treat you like an option. Respect doesn't begin with them. It begins with you. This is not about arrogance. It's about alignment. Because until you act like you deserve it, until your posture, your words, your habits, and your circle reflect your standard, you will keep attracting people who see you as less, but not after today. Today, we flip the script, and it starts with how you carry yourself. They don't see your value because you showed them where to place the price tag. And you didn't put it high. You didn't demand excellence. You didn't act like someone who was worth respecting. You acted like someone waiting for respect to be handed out, like approval was a charity. And you were hoping today might be your lucky draw. You wonder why they interrupt you mid-sentence, why they forget your name, why they never ask for your opinion until they've already decided. You train them, not with words, but with energy, with posture, with the way you've been walking through your own life like a side character. You don't get what you want, you get what you tolerate. And somewhere along the line, you started tolerating less than what you deserved. You made it a habit to lower your eyes, to bite your tongue, to let things slide for the sake of being easy to work with or nice to be around. But let me ask you this. When did you decide being liked mattered more than being respected? Because they're not the same, and they never will be. There's a moment, quiet, subtle, when someone watches how you respond to disrespect. And in that moment, a rule is written in their mind, a blueprint. They note it down. He doesn't correct people when they cross the line. He smiles through it. He laughs it off. He shrinks back when he should stand tall. That's all it takes. One moment of hesitation, and the world builds your reputation out of it. You think people are mistreating you? No, they're reflecting you. That's the hard truth. The world is holding up a mirror, not a sword. What you see around you, dismissal, neglect, underestimation, is just the echo of how you've been treating yourself. You've told them who you are, not with your resume, but with your rhythm. Not with what you demand, but with what you accept. You've walked into rooms with small talk and smaller presence, and now you're shocked they don't see you as a force? People don't rise to meet your potential. They fall in line with your pattern, and your pattern has been too soft, too polite, too passive. But that changes the moment you change. Not your back says more than your mouth. The way you walk into a room, the way you answer a question, the way you sit with your own silence, it all speaks before you ever open your lips. You think people treat you how they do because of who they are? No. They're reacting to who you've shown them you are. Every habit you repeat, every time you hesitate, every time you say it's fine when it's not, you're teaching them quietly, repeatedly, powerfully. This world doesn't listen to your words. It listens to your pattern. And yours might be screaming, "I'm not sure I belong here." You can wear confidence like a costume. But if your posture folds, if your voice trails off, if your energy shrinks, they'll pick up on it. Not consciously, but viscerally. They'll feel it, they'll label it, and they'll treat you accordingly. People don't just respond to what you say. They respond to what you signal, and your signals, they're on autopilot. You train them with your predictability. You train them when you said yes too quickly, when you smiled through disrespect, when you backed down to keep the peace. You train them with every time you let a moment pass that should have been a boundary. And now you wonder why they walk over you like you're part of the floor. You don't need to raise your voice. You need to raise your standard, because the standard is what sets the tone. Not the mood, not the music, not the mission statement, the standard. When you walk differently, they notice. When you answer with precision instead of apology, they pause. When you say no without a paragraph of reasons, they adjust. People aren't evil. They're just efficient. They test the limits. And when they find yours have no consequence, they keep pushing. Not because they hate you, but because they've learned that treating you this way gets no resistance. They treat you casually because you've been too casual about your worth. They treat you like an option because you've been optional with your presence. That ends today. You don't have to yell. You don't have to prove. You don't have to explain. You just have to start behaving like someone who expects respect, not someone who hopes for it. Your energy is a thermostat, not a thermometer. You don't just reflect the room, you set the room. But only when you stop flinching every time someone makes you question yourself. So train them, not with words, but with your walk, with your consistency, with your quiet refusal to accept anything less than what aligns. Show them what can no longer be said to you, what can no longer be asked of you, what can no longer be assumed about you, because the way they treat you is just the echo of the example you've set. Change the signal and watch the world recalibrate. You think you're being humble. You think shrinking makes you easier to love, safer to keep, more palatable to those who can't handle your full size. But there's nothing noble about pretending to be less than what you are. That isn't humility, that's self-betrayal, and it's a slow one. The world does not reward you for making others comfortable at your own expense. It learns to expect your silence, to depend on your hesitation, to treat your presence like wallpaper. Nice enough, but not worth staring at. And the saddest part? You know it. Somewhere in you, there's a voice that's been whispering, "We were meant for more than this." But you hush it. You bury it under politeness. You drown it in approval. You keep telling yourself that playing small keeps things peaceful, that it's mature, that it's safe. But what it really is fear. Fear dressed up in the costume of modesty. Fear of being seen and possibly rejected. Fear of shining and being asked to stay that bright. Fear that if you step fully into your power, the people who like the quieter version of you might step away. But here's the truth. If your presence only has value when you're small, then it's not respect they're giving you. It's control. If they only stay close when you dim yourself, they're not companions. They're cages. And every time you shrink to make them feel big, you teach them that their comfort matters more than your becoming. This is not humility. Real humility is strength under control. It's power with perspective. It's knowing exactly who you are and not needing to announce it, but never denying it either. Shrinking, on the other hand, is denial. It's betrayal, not of them, of you, of your gifts, of your voice, of the light you were meant to bring into this world without apology. So stop calling it humility. Start calling it what it really is, a habit of self-erasure. And like all habits, it can be broken. But only if you stop defending it. Only if you stop mistaking silence for grace. Only if you decide that who you are, in full, is not too much, not too loud, not too ambitious, not too intense. You were never too much. You were just surrounded by people too scared to grow beside you. So stop shrinking, start standing, because every time you choose to play small, you give the world permission to ignore the very thing that makes you unforgettable. You've been waiting for a green light that's never coming, waiting for someone to nod, to say you're allowed, to invite you to be who you already are. But the truth is brutal and freeing. No one's going to give you permission to exist. Not the way you need to, not the way you were meant to. If you keep holding your breath until someone tells you you're enough, you'll suffocate in a room full of people too distracted to notice. You were not born to be granted. Let me make it plain. Validation is a trap. The longer you chase it, the smaller your life becomes. Because once you need it, you become easy to control. You'll bend your truth just to keep the applause. You'll betray your gut to avoid disapproval. And worst of all, you'll stay stuck, not because you aren't ready, but because you've handed your keys to people who don't even know where you're trying to go. Stop that. Stop seeking permission to do what your soul already knows is yours to do. Speak, lead, build. Claim the identity you've been postponing until someone else decides you've earned it. You're not here to be voted into power. You're here to remember it, because nobody can give you permission to exist. That's yours by birthright. The only person who can deny it is you. So if you're waiting, let this be the moment you stop. Step forward. Not when you feel ready, not when they approve, but now, as you are. Because the world doesn't need another quiet version of you. It needs the full one. The one that doesn't flinch, doesn't fold, doesn't ask before standing tall. The one that knows. Taking up space isn't arrogance, it's alignment. And you don't need a yes from anyone to walk in your own name. Confidence doesn't arrive like a gift. It's built like a wall, brick by brick, in silence. It's not something someone can hand you. It's not inherited, and it's not granted when people like you follow you or say you're worthy. Confidence is forged in the invisible moments when you say, I will, and then actually do. It's born in the tiny battles no one sees, the early mornings, the cold showers, the workouts you didn't want to do, the boundaries you enforced even when your voice shook. You keep thinking confidence is about charisma, about walking into a room and being the loudest. But confidence has nothing to do with volume. It has everything to do with self-trust, with knowing that when you say something, you mean it. That when you look in the mirror, you're not just seeing potential, you're seeing proof. Proof that you keep your word. That your standards aren't just posted on your wall. They're alive in your behavior. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think confidence is a feeling. So they wait for it. They think, once I feel confident, I'll act. But that's not how it works. You don't act because you're confident. You become confident because you act. Because you move anyway, you speak anyway. Treat them like sacred contracts. Because every time you follow through, even on something small, you teach your mind, I can rely on me. And that's when everything changes. People respect those who respect their own word. People believe in those who believe in their own direction. But it all starts with you, with the man or woman in the mirror who either keeps showing up or keeps making excuses. Confidence isn't a mystery, it's math. Repetition, integrity, follow-through. And if you want to be magnetic, if you want people to feel your presence before you speak, then you must become the kind of person who trusts themselves without hesitation. So stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for praise. Build it, earn it, and watch how everything and everyone responds to the version of you who keeps their promises without exception. There was a time you shrank just a little. Not because you lacked power, but because you felt the room couldn't handle it. You quieted your opinions, softened your tone, kept your dreams small enough not to make anyone uncomfortable. You learned to laugh a little less loud, dress a little more muted, downplay your wins, and apologize for your hunger. Not because you were wrong, but because they were scared. Scared of what your fullness exposed in them. Scared of what your fire said about their ashes. You weren't too much. You were just too awake for people still sleeping. And instead of asking why are they asleep, you asked what's wrong with me for being so alive. But let me tell you something with full clarity. There is nothing wrong with your intensity. There's nothing wrong with your depth, your ambition, your clarity, your sharp edges. What's wrong is a world that tells you to sand them down so no one gets scratched. What's wrong is the conditioning that taught you approval matters more than alignment. You think being liked is the goal, but being liked is a prison when the cost is yourself. You trade authenticity for acceptance and wonder why you feel empty. You mute your brilliance and wonder why people treat you like background noise. But how can they see you if you've made yourself invisible for their comfort? You're not too loud. They're just used to silence. You're not too driven. They've just never met someone who refuses to settle. You are not too intense. You just remind them of everything they were afraid to become. And still, you edit, you shrink, you step aside in rooms you were built to lead. Why? Because you were taught that taking up space. So stop contorting, stop dimming, stop apologizing for showing up fully. Some people will leave. Let them. They were never meant for the version of you that honors your truth. They were only ever aligned with your pretending. You're not too much. You're just finally enough for yourself. And that's the only audience that matters. When you stop editing, the world will either adjust or reveal who never belonged. Either way, you win. Every time you said yes when you meant no, a little part of you withered. You didn't see it then. You thought you were being kind, easy to get along with, helpful. You thought keeping the peace meant saying sure when your soul screamed otherwise. But over time, those tiny betrayals stacked up, quietly forming a wall between who you were and who you were pretending to be. People didn't respect you more because of it. They respected you less. Not because they were cruel, but because you trained them. You taught them that your time was optional, that your energy was free, that your presence didn't require permission, it was guaranteed. They didn't take from you because they were villains. They took from you because you never once said enough. But here's what no one told you. Boundaries don't push people away. They show them where to meet you. A boundary isn't a wall. It's a map. It says, here is where I begin. Here is what I value. Here is how I expect to be treated. And the people who truly love you, they don't run from that map. They use it. They honor it. They rise to meet you at its edges. You've been taught to feel guilt where you should feel power. To think that saying no is some kind of failure in compassion. But it's not cruelty. It's clarity. And clarity is the highest form of respect, because it doesn't pretend, it doesn't manipulate, it doesn't hide behind a mask of martyrdom. It says, this is what I need in order to stay whole. The people who recoil when you set a boundary, they were never comfortable with the real you. They were only ever comfortable with your compliance. They weren't invested in your growth, only your usefulness. And when you stop being easy, they call you selfish. Draw the line. Speak the no. Protect the sacred space that is your soul. Because when you finally do, you'll stop living in fragments and start living in full. Every time you say, I'm just bad with money, or I'm not that smart, or I could never pull that off, you're not being humble. You're casting a spell, a quiet, subtle, relentless incantation that tells the world who to believe you are. And they listen. They mirror it. They absorb it until your own mouth becomes the greatest enemy of your identity. Words shape perception, not just in others, but in yourself. The language you use about your own life, your potential, your value, it's not neutral. It builds, it bends, it defines. You call yourself lazy as a joke, but over time, that joke becomes the story. You say, I'm fine, when you're drowning, and eventually, no one throws you a rope. You whisper, it's no big deal, when it absolutely is, and the world learns to ignore your needs because you've taught them to. Weak language doesn't just invite disrespect, it normalizes it. There's a kind of power in silence, yes, but there's also power in speech. And the words you let slip about yourself, unguarded, unchecked, shrugged off, those are the ones doing the most damage. Because repetition is reputation, even when it's whispered, even when it's meant as self-deprecating humor. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference. It doesn't laugh when you insult yourself. It listens, it learns, and then it lives it out. The truth is, no one respects someone who speaks about themselves like they don't matter. Not because people are cruel, but because they take their cues from you. If you treat your voice like background noise, others will tune you out too. If you speak like your dreams are foolish, people won't ask about them. If you constantly minimize your own light, They'll walk right past you without ever looking up. But here's the shift. You don't need to speak like you're a god to command respect. But too many men wear underdog like a badge of honor. They romanticize being the one overlooked, underestimated, counted out. They make a home in that identity. I'll show them one day, they say, but deep down, they've made peace with being ignored. There's a certain safety in being the one no one expects much from. You can't disappoint people if they're not even watching. You can't fall if you never climb. You can't lose if you never step into the ring. But here's the truth no one tells you. Underdog is not a fixed position. It's a choice, a story, one that you keep retelling long after the facts have changed. Maybe you were counted out once. Maybe people really did overlook you, but you've internalized it now. It's not them anymore. It's you. You've become your own oppressor, your own gatekeeper. You've decided that playing small is safer than being seen. And the world is just reflecting that decision back to you. When you keep deflecting praise, they stop giving it. When you downplay your ideas, they stop listening. When you act like your presence is a disruption, they start treating you like one. That's the game. That's the pattern. The longer you perform the role of the outsider, the more it becomes who you are. But here's the flip. You can walk in like you belong before anyone else says you do. In fact, you have to. Confidence doesn't come from proof. It comes from presence. It comes from a decision to stop apologizing for being in the room, to stop asking for permission, to stop waiting for someone to point at you and say, now you're worthy. You're already worthy. You've always been. The question is, will you act like it? Because people don't believe what you say. They believe what you embody. They believe the man who speaks without flinching, who takes up space without shrinking, who moves like he knows exactly why he's here. That's who gets listened to. That's who gets respected. That's who gets invited back. So stop playing the underdog. Stop auditioning for a seat They underprice it. They delay the launch, shrink the pitch, dilute the fire, not because they can't, but because deep down they think they shouldn't. And so the world agrees. Your mind is a projector, not a receiver. Whatever image you hold inside will be broadcast onto the screen of your life. That's why two men can walk into the same room and walk out with two different outcomes. One believes he's valuable, and people mirror that belief. The other believes he's lucky to be noticed, and people treat him like a distraction. You keep wondering why they don't respect you, but have you respected yourself in the way you move, in the way you talk about yourself when no one's listening? Have you stopped asking for things like you're stealing from the table? Have you stopped discounting your presence as if it's some inconvenience? You cannot rise above the man you see in your own mind. You can fake it for a season. You can dress it up, polish the words, impress the room, but eventually your reality will bend to match your self-perception. And if that perception is small, your life will shrink to match it. Not because the world hates you, but because it listens to you closely. Here's the hard truth. You teach others how to treat you by how you treat yourself when no one's watching. If you neglect your discipline, they'll neglect your time. If you speak down to yourself, they'll believe you. If you walk like you're second-guessing your own steps, they'll stop following. But the opposite is also true. See yourself as a man of worth, and the world starts adjusting its posture around you. Not immediately, not always kindly, but inevitably. Because nothing is more magnetic than a man who knows who he is and doesn't apologize for it. So before you ask for more, look inward. Who are you in the mirror when no one's looking? Not the face, not the hair, the frequency, the truth. Because that's the version everyone else is responding to. That's the image they see, and that's the one that needs to change. They told you silence was noble, that keeping your head down was maturity, that biting your tongue was strength, and so you did. You swallowed your thoughts, you held back your fire, you became agreeable, measured, invisible, and you called it discipline. You called it wisdom. You told yourself it was power restrained. But it wasn't. It was fear. But you weren't made to stay safe. You were made to stand out. And every time you held your tongue out of fear, every time you let the moment pass, every time you told yourself, now isn't the time, you didn't protect your power, you buried it. Let me be clear. Silence can be sacred. Silence can be strategic. But silence rooted in fear is a cage. And cages don't protect, they diminish. They dull your edges. They dim your presence. They teach the world that your voice isn't needed, that your ideas aren't worth hearing, that you're content watching from the back row. And the world listens, because people don't respect what they don't notice. They don't follow what they don't hear. They don't fight for what isn't willing to fight for itself. Your silence is not neutral. It's a signal. And if the signal says, I don't believe I belong here, then no one else will believe it either. This is how men lose their voice. Not in one loud moment, but in 1,000 quiet ones. A glance avoided, a truth withheld, a standard lowered, a boundary never drawn. And over time, they become background characters in their own life, present but not active, alive but not loud. A whisper when they were born to be a roar. And here's what makes it worse. You start to mistake invisibility for humility. You start to believe that playing small is somehow virtuous, that not speaking up is polite, that being overlooked is proof that you're selfless. It's not. It's self-abandonment. Respect isn't earned by erasing yourself. It's earned by revealing yourself fully, unapologetically, and consistently. Not by shouting to be seen, but by standing so firmly in who you are that your presence does the talking before your words ever arrive. So ask yourself, when was the last time you said what needed to be said, not for attention, but for alignment? When was the last time your silence was a strategy, not a surrender? Because if your quiet is rooted in fear, you're not gaining peace, you're losing power. And you won't find your voice in the echo of other people's comfort. You'll find it when you decide that being heard matters more than being liked. The world doesn't need more polite silence. It needs more bold truth. And that starts with you. Everyone wants to be respected. They chase it in titles and applause and approval from people who barely know them. But they skip over the one thing that actually commands respect. The one thing no one else sees, but everyone feels. Your routine. Respect doesn't start in the spotlight. It starts before dawn. It starts when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when it's just you, your discipline, and the mirror. That's where reputation is forged, not in your highlight reel, but in your habits. Because here's the truth. The world treats you how you treat yourself. And if your life is chaos, if your time is scattered, your standards are loose, and your word means nothing to you, don't be surprised when no one else takes you seriously either. Discipline isn't about punishment. It's about power. It's about keeping the promises you make to yourself long after the motivation has faded. Because motivation is a mood, but routine is a decision. And the man who lives by decisions outlasts the man who waits on moods. You can walk into a room and say nothing at all. But if your routine is sharp, your posture is different. Your presence is different. You don't have to convince people you're focused. They can feel it. You don't have to tell them you're consistent. They already know. Because discipline leaves a scent. It lingers in your energy. It echoes in your results. You want respect? Wake up earlier than your excuses. And no, it doesn't have to be perfect. You'll mess up. You'll fall off. You'll miss a step. But the man with a routine always finds his way back. He doesn't stay lost because he has a map. And that map is made of the small decisions he's committed to daily. Make your bed. Finish what you start. Speak with clarity. Move with purpose. These aren't small things. They are seismic. Because every act of order pushes back against the chaos that wants to run your life. And the people around you, they notice. They may not say it. They may not applaud. But deep down, they feel it. Because respect is not begged for. It's mirrored. And you don't mirror someone whose life is out of control. You mirror the man who leads himself, who doesn't wait to feel ready, who wakes up and does what needs to be done anyway. That man doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard. He doesn't need to chase attention. His routine speaks louder than his resume. So if you're tired of being overlooked, if you're done being underestimated, don't scream louder. Move sharper. Build a routine so solid it can't be ignored, because discipline is quiet, but the respect it commands is thunderous. You can lie to others. You can dress it up. Smile when you're falling apart. Talk big when your soul feels small. You can fake it all day long, and most people won't question it. But the mirror doesn't lie. It reflects who you really are when no one's watching, when the image isn't curated, when the audience is gone, and all that's left is you. And here's what no one wants to admit. The way you treat yourself in those quiet, unfiltered moments, that's the standard you teach the world to follow. You walk past your reflection every day. Do you meet your own eyes? Or do you avoid them, like a stranger you're ashamed to know? Because if you can't look yourself in the eye with pride, with certainty, with even a flicker of self-respect, don't expect anyone else to treat you like you matter. See, people are mirrors. They respond to what you broadcast. If your inner dialogue is self-doubt, self-judgment, self-deprecation, then your energy will reek of it. If your actions scream, "I don't deserve better," then others will hear it loud and clear, even if you never say a word. You can demand love, respect, recognition, but if you don't give it to yourself first, your demands fall flat, because the world takes its cue from you. Look closer. Are you eating like you respect your body? Are you speaking like your words matter? Are you moving like you have a purpose? Are you dressing, showing up, resting, working, dreaming like someone who believes they belong in the room? Or are you shrinking, apologizing, hesitating, hoping someone else will see what you've stopped looking for in yourself? The mirror won't lie to you. And if you don't start there, if you don't face yourself and get honest, everything you build will be shaky, because you'll be waiting on external respect to fix an internal fracture. Respect starts at home. And home isn't your apartment, your city, or your job. Home is your skin. It's your soul. It's how you speak to yourself when you fail. It's how you walk like you've already earned it, not because you're faking it, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because deep down, you know if you don't claim your space, someone else will. If you don't move like you belong, people will treat you like you don't. People read certainty like a second language. They see it in how you stand, how you speak, how you walk into a room. Not just physically, but energetically. You either carry conviction or hesitation, and whichever one you bring, the world will mirror it right back. We think confidence is born in applause, in titles, in credentials. But that's a lie. Confidence isn't given. It's chosen. It's the decision to move forward even when you're still scared, to speak with clarity even when your voice shakes, to act like your dreams are real before anyone else agrees with you. You walk like you've already earned it when you stop asking for permission, when you stop waiting for proof, when you stop hesitating at every turn, hoping the world will open a door out of kindness. It won't. But it will open out of recognition, and it only recognizes what moves with power. Look at the people you admire, the ones who lead, the ones who turn heads without trying. It's not their wealth, it's not their looks. It's the way they move, the way they carry themselves like they've already crossed the finish line, like their presence needs no justification. But here's the truth they won't tell you. They weren't born like that. They decided, they practiced, and most importantly, they stopped waiting for something external to confirm who they already knew they were inside. Hesitation is a leak. It drips out your power drop by drop. Every time you doubt yourself, pause too long, walk too softly, or speak like you don't want to take up too much space, you train the world to overlook you. You don't need a reason to walk with authority. You are the reason. Start with your posture, not just your shoulders, your energy, your beliefs, Your tone. Do they say, "I'm trying," or do they say, "I'm here"? When you walk into a room, walk like you've already paid the price for being there, because in some way you have. Every sleepless night, every moment of silence when you wanted to scream, every time you kept going when you didn't feel seen. You earned this, not because you're perfect, but because you refuse to quit. So walk like it, because people don't follow perfection. They follow certainty. They'll say you've changed, and they'll be right. But what they won't admit, what they can't accept, is that you were never meant to stay the version of you that made them comfortable. See, outgrowing isn't betrayal, it's evolution. It's what happens when your dreams start to stretch wider than the circle. Some people were only ever meant to meet the version of you that didn't know better, the version of you that tolerated too much, gave too freely, and dimmed too often. And that's okay. Every chapter has characters that don't make it to the next one, not because they're bad, but because they were part of your becoming, not your becoming more. Loyalty isn't staying in rooms that drain you. It's honoring the truth of who you're becoming. It's choosing alignment over approval. It's accepting that the price of evolution is often misunderstanding. So no, you're not disloyal for growing. You're not wrong for creating distance where there used to be comfort. You're not selfish for refusing to keep watering connections that wither when you bloom. You're just finally loving yourself enough to choose the path that stretches you, even if it means walking it alone for a while. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them hold a grudge against a ghost, because the real you, the one you're stepping into now, doesn't owe anyone an explanation for outgrowing the cage you were never meant to stay in. They won't say it to your face. Most people never do. But they've already decided what you're worth because you told them, not with your words, but with your time. You showed them. Every time you answered a message the moment it buzzed, every time you said yes when your gut screamed no, every time you paused your purpose to play assistant in someone else's chaos, you were teaching them exactly where to place you. And they listened. They don't respect you because you don't respect your time. That's the truth. Time is your most limited currency, and you're giving it out like it's on sale. To people who don't value it. To distractions that don't serve you. To routines that drain you. And yet you wonder why no one takes your goals seriously. Why they don't honor your focus. Why they treat your vision like a hobby. Here's why. You taught them it was optional. You showed them that their urgency matters more than your direction. You let them believe that your attention is free. And when attention is free, so are the boundaries around it. You say you're building something, but how many hours have you traded for approval this week? How many quick calls turned into emotional sinkholes? How many moments of silence did you fill with noise just to avoid the discomfort of your own discipline? Listen, your calendar is your self-respect in motion. If you don't protect it, no one will. You are not available for everyone at all times. You are not meant to be the 24/7 problem solver, the perpetual fixer, the emotional first responder for people who wouldn't cross the street for your dream. That's not loyalty. That's self-abandonment dressed as service. Every time you say yes to what doesn't matter, you say no to what does. And every just 5 minutes adds up to a lifetime of delay. People aren't ignoring your time because they're cruel. They're following your lead. You've made it clear their plans outrank yours. Their comfort outweighs your growth. Their schedule gets priority over your mission. But it can stop today. Start treating your hours like sacred space, not negotiable, not up for discussion. Block your time like your future depends on it, because it does. Create rituals that they won't say it out loud. Most people won't. But deep down they sense it. You need their validation. You need to be liked. And the moment they know that, they know they own you. Not out of cruelty, just instinct. When someone's approval is your drug, they become the dealer. And the dealer always holds the power. This is how people pleasers lose authority. Not because they aren't capable, but because their energy whispers desperation. Because every yes you don't mean teaches the world you can be swayed. Every silence when something needed to be said tells people you'll fold. You may be invited, included, even praised, but not followed, not feared in the right way, not respected. You can't lead if you're afraid to be disliked. You can't build anything lasting if you crumble at criticism. Greatness demands friction. Progress requires confrontation. And every powerful man has had to accept this hard truth. At some point, you will disappoint someone. The only question is, will it be them or will it be yourself? Stop trying to be the favorite. Be the force, the presence that doesn't apologize for clarity, the voice that doesn't tremble when it speaks truth. Because the moment you stop fearing rejection, you start commanding attention. That doesn't mean becoming rude. It doesn't mean becoming cold. It means becoming anchored, grounded in who you are and what you're here to do. It means choosing purpose over politeness when the two collide. And they will collide. Your vision will offend someone's comfort. Your growth will challenge someone's stagnation. Your standards will frustrate the ones who benefited from your old softness. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them label you difficult. Let them say you've changed. You have. You were never meant to be palatable to everyone. You were meant to be powerful to the right ones. Respect isn't handed to the nicest man in the room. It's given to the one who walks like he doesn't need it, the one who speaks truth even when it's sharp, the one who can be liked but refuses to live for it. So if you've been wondering why people overlook your strength, your vision, your leadership, ask yourself this: have you traded your authority for affection? And if so, when are you ready to take it back? Because the world will not respect a man who fears its disapproval, but it will follow one who stands firm, even if he stands alone. You walk into the room thinking they want your resume, your degrees, your accolades, your pedigree. You believe if you show them enough qualifications, they'll open the door, they'll nod with approval, they'll grant you access. But here's the truth no one tells you. Your posture speaks louder than your pedigree ever will. Because people don't follow credentials. They follow conviction. You've seen it before. A man with nothing but confidence walks into a room and owns it. Not because of what he's done, but because of how he moves. The stillness in his eyes, the weight in his presence, the way he carries himself like he knows where he's going and doesn't need anyone's permission to get there. That kind of posture doesn't come from paper. It comes from pressure, from choosing belief over insecurity when no one was watching, from standing tall even when your legs were shaking, from betting on yourself when you had every reason to fold. You can't fake conviction. You either carry it or you don't. And the world knows the difference. That's why some men with all the right titles still shrink in a room full of doubt. They wait for affirmation. They look for cues. They defer, apologize, play small, hoping their qualifications will speak for them. But qualifications don't move people. Certainty does. You have to ask yourself, what enters the room first? Your accomplishments or your energy? Because if it's the former, you'll always be explaining. If it's the latter, you won't have to. Conviction doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It doesn't need applause. It just is. A quiet, immovable presence. And the men who carry it shape the room without saying a word. There is a moment when every man has to decide, will I let my worth be measured by their checklist? Or will I let my presence rewrite the rules? Will I wait for validation? Or will I walk with such belief in who I am that validation becomes irrelevant? The most dangerous man in any room is not the most educated. It's the one who knows who he is and refuses to be anything else. And here's the secret. They can feel it before you speak, before you sit, before you pitch. They feel whether you carry weight or not. And if you don't believe you belong, neither will they. So stop rehearsing your story like it's a case to win. Start walking like your name already means something, because it does. Your posture is your proclamation. Make it strong. Make it still. Make it say, I'm not here to be accepted. I'm here because I belong. That's when respect shows up. Not when they know your history, but when they feel your presence. And if you can walk like a man who needs no crown to know he's royal, the world won't ask for your credentials. It will just get out of your way. They're watching. Some with curiosity, some with quiet judgment, some with fear in their eyes, because your growth exposes their stillness. And yet, you keep moving, because you finally learned respect isn't earned through explanation. It's earned through evolution. There was a time you tried to bring everyone along. You spoke softly, made disclaimers for your ambition, reassured them that you were still the same. But you're not. And that's not betrayal. That's becoming. The ones who loved your former self might not clap for your becoming. They might flinch at your new tone, question your new boundaries, whisper about how you've changed. And they're right. You have. Because staying the same was killing something inside you. You don't owe anyone an apology for outgrowing the version of you they were comfortable with. That version might have been agreeable, small, easy to digest, but it was incomplete. You were shrinking to keep peace, laughing at jokes that insulted your vision, nodding at advice that kept you tied to who you used to be. You don't need to scream your transformation. You just need to live it. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them say, he thinks he's better than us now. Not because you do, but because you've decided to stop pretending you're the same. Respect comes when you no longer need to be understood, when you rise anyway, when you evolve in plain sight, not for show, but for survival. The world may resist your evolution at first. People cling to consistency, even if that consistency is killing you. But one day they'll stop questioning, because you won't be someone they recognize anymore. And that's the point. Let your discipline explain what your words no longer will. Let your boundaries teach them how to approach you now. Let your growth make its own statement, a quiet, undeniable shift that says this version doesn't need to be defended. You were not born to be static. You were meant to transform again and again, becoming sharper, stronger, clearer. And every time you do, someone will watch from the sidelines, too afraid to leap, but fascinated that you dared to. That fascination becomes respect, not instantly, but inevitably. So let them watch, not to prove anything, but to remind yourself your life is not a vote. Your change is not a debate. You're not in this to be approved. You're in this to be true. And when they ask, what happened to you? You can smile without flinching and say, I stopped asking for permission. Let them call it arrogance. Let them mislabel your growth. Let them walk away if they must. Because the people who matter won't need you to explain. They'll meet you where you are. And the ones who don't, they were only ever loyal to your limits. You used to beg for respect with your tone, your timing, your tiptoeing. You tried to earn it through politeness, through silence, through being easy to work with. But what you didn't realize back then is that real respect doesn't come to the agreeable. It comes to the unshakable. Respect isn't handed out like candy to the ones who wait their turn and lower their voice. It's magnetized by those who stand firm, who know who they are, and move like it. The old you wanted approval. The new you builds alignment. You no longer chase being liked. You construct a life so honest, so solid, so certain, it commands attention. Because the truth is, begging for respect always backfires. It lowers you. It teaches others that your worth is up for negotiation. And people don't value what they see you discount. The new you doesn't ask people to treat him better. He makes it impossible not to. He doesn't try to persuade the room. He builds his own table. He doesn't adapt to every mood. He builds his own atmosphere. He doesn't explain why he's walking differently now. He just walks like the man who no longer waits for permission to rise. When you beg, you leak power. When you build, you generate it. The old you was reactive, waiting for the green light, the invitation, the compliment, the signal that it was okay to be who you were. The new you flips the switch himself, and the shift is felt. You enter a room now, and people don't just notice, they adjust. Not because you're loud, but because you're clear. Not because you threaten, but because you don't flinch. Not because you fight for space, but because you own it. You used to think humility meant downplaying your power. Now you understand. Humility is knowing you don't need to prove anything, but refusing to pretend you're less than what you are. This doesn't mean arrogance. It means alignment. You don't speak to impress, you speak to impact. You don't dress for approval. You dress like you've already arrived. You don't argue with doubters. You make them irrelevant. And yes, it'll confuse some people. They'll say you changed, that you're colder, that you used to be more chill. They're right. You did change. You stopped seeking. You started building, because at some point every man must choose, continue chasing respect in a world that will never fully give it, or become so aligned with his mission that respect starts chasing him. You've made your choice, and now your presence is no longer a request, it's a declaration.